Hello and welcome to module number 2. I hope the first week was not so bad and so you are familiarized with the class and the material that involve in this class. I will start with basic definitions of what we discuss, and I will then move to what is the grammar and what is the elements that consist of visualization. And in the end, I will show you the first time I will start show you what is Tableau, one of the most popular application, but you will see the limitation that Tableau has and understand how to work with it in order for you to produce visualization. So this is the objective of the module, and let us begin. So we talked last time about what is visual analytics, and I display to you different definitions and how they see it and how they interpret what is the visual analytics. But those definition does not give us any terminology with regard to the design of the visualization. So in order for us to understand what is visual analytics, we need to understand what is the context of the visual. It consists of points, it consists of line, coordinate system, which is the canvas, the numbers, the symbols, the words, the shading, and the color. And this is according to Professor Taft, and you will see a lot of Taft later on this semester where he outlined or wrote very important textbooks about visualization and what does it entail. But let's go back to the foundation of visualization. In text, we have the alphabetical, and in visualization, we have points. And points is usually it is some kind of relationship or order as a way to present what is the data, what it captured in that dot. Line is also part of our terminology, and line makes by a moving point and having some impact according to its directions, its weight, and how it all play out in the visualization. So again, this is part of how the line composition is set up together with the dot or point. And again, you're trying to try to tell a story using those elements. Circle is another way for us to do that, and we can do it in different colors, different shape. The width and the height of the circle is also the same. Goes with the text. We can display the text or we can sort the text, and we also have patterns in the background in order for us to make the point clear. And that's important because part of where for us to design the visualization is the patterns. And of course, one of the major aspects of visualization is the color. And we can play with the color, and I want you to be aware that color has also a lot of cultural references. I am originally from the Middle East, so we have different color palette than you as people who came from Florida or up north have different palette than I have. So those are the things that we will look at. The visualization also has different type of formats. We have bar, line, pie, and scatter plot, and that try to tell the story. Bar chart is usually the most common type of data visualization, and usually they display different quantitatives of single variable. And so in this case, frequency of visiting. Line graph in comparison, has ability to connect the plot with horizontal axis representing time, and coordinate grid is the map or the paper that we use to create our visualization, where we have the y-axis and the x-axis, and those are the points that we try to make connection between what the data represent and apply that into our visual. Pie chart is also very popular, but they give viewers a quick view of understanding of the distribution of the data. And in this case, we can see who is the leading category, in this case police, with regard to budget. So the police get most of the budget in our local government. Scatter plot is also very popular, and it usually shows find a relationship between data set. And this is important because one of the things that we will learn is to compare different data sets. So one of the things that I said in the first module is that your professor do not like Excel, and I will try to illustrate that by showing what Excel cannot do with regard to visualization. It cannot do bubble chart, he cannot do ring chart, he cannot do distribution maps and self-organizing map or heat maps, and so on and so on. So those are the things that me as a researcher and educator, when a software application cannot do something, it give me a mark that this is not acceptable. And I want something that will help me to display or to tell the story of the data with a machine or software that enable me to display that. Bubble chart is really nice, and it's really aesthetic, and ability to show dimension of the data. In this case, we have different continent, and the different colors the display in the chart. Ring chart is also try to the idea of visualization and allowed us to compare similar data set. But one of the things that I did not say or did not emphasize in my introduction about what is visual analytics is the idea of statistics. And to those who are not familiar with statistics, we often define statistics as a collecting, describing, and providing interpretation of the data. Usually, in any textbook in the field of statistics, usually they define it in two fields: descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Descriptive is about collecting, presenting, and description the sample data. Inferential is making decision or drawing conclusion about the population. An example: a recent study examined the math and verbal GRE score of high schools. So the mean was 492. The mean that was the mean for the math score, and the verbal score was 475. And from that we can learn that 80% of all students taking the exam were headed for college, and 32% received the score of 610 on the verbal. Those are the things that we are looking at in order for us to make better decisions about the data, about the analysis. So the introduction to basic terms in this example is the population versus the sample. Population, we are talking about all the entire collection, or all the individual or object that been analyzed. And a sample is a subset of the population that we're trying to measure. In this type of statistical world, we also have additional definition, variable, data, experiment, and so on. All those things are taking part or taking into account when we are creating the visualization. I'm sure that you are familiar with the term variable. It is a characteristic of each individual element of the population or the sample. And we will learn how to emphasize the variables when we are doing a comparison. And when we are doing a summary of the data. So again, I lay out for you all those terms in simple English in order for you to have a sense that the objective here is that how can we convert those ideas into the visualization in order for us to do that. When we are talking about variables, we are talking about two types, categorical and numerical. Categorical describe the element of the population. Numerical, in comparison, qualify the element of the population. So again, talking back to the Stefan Few textbook, when we attempt to make sense of quantitative data, more than anything else, we examine its variables. And so the idea of a variable in this case is the idea that we are trying to match up the connection and be able to understand what is it entail. There was a mistake in my side, space that I did not intend, but this is the idea of it. So an example, the resident hall for each student in the statistical class, or the amount of gasoline pumped by the next 10 customers at the local Walmart store, and so on are example. But now our objective is that we understand what is a variable, but now we need to convert this idea that we have in our mind into our eyes. So our eyes basically is 70% of our body senses, and according to another author, Colin Ware, we should be interested in the visualization because the human visual system is a pattern seeker that allowed us to make this decision, or allowed us to have the power to make those decisions. And he wrote that in 1992. So again, the issue of the power of visualization. In the top, we have a table, man versus woman. In the bottom, we have the visual. So what makes more sense here? The man versus the woman. And this is where the issue of visualization come into play. When we are talking about the visual perception works, we see through our eyes. There is the actual image, and what we see through our eyes, which goes to the brain and the brain produces the final product. How the visual perception works, basic issue is the figure versus the background. We have a figure, but we also need to combine what is the background of this figure. So we have this idea what it is, but images can also be ambiguous, and sometimes the ambiguous images get us confused or get us lost in what we are trying to achieve. So the issue of a figure is sometimes visual sense are sometimes ambiguous, and so is the picture on the left a left picture of a young stylish woman or older woman? Does it really tell us all the story behind that? We don't know, and this is what the visualization can apply to. One of the things, one of the fundamental or grounded laws in visualization is called Gestalt law. And the Gestalt in German is called patterns. So it is patterns of perception, or the idea of figuring out where the content of the visual can be displayed. So there's principles that entail with that. Proxy is the things that are close together and they are presented as a group. So the rule is, according to Gestalt, is that the best way to emphasize a relationship between different data entity is to place them in close relationship in display. So in this case, this is the idea of it. Similarity is that similar elements, shape or color are grouped together. It is basically based on the previous rule and which combine separate dimensions to assist the visual segmentation. So the rule is related visual image should look similar. And again, this is an example of it. And there is the issue of connection, to show the connection between them and apply to it. And so this is idea of this type of rule and what it means and the connectivities of that we will assume, or we will look at that as one component even though they are separate. Symmetry is another idea of the visual, how to emphasize a relationship. So the possible use of it is to emphasize similarity. So you use this rule to show relative visual elements. And again, similarity between the left and right, and show the same consistency on it. Closure is another thing that we often look at visualization. We are looking at a Venn diagram or application windows, and the rule is that use closed region to segment visual space or group similar elements. So those are the closure example that the people who believe in Gestalt believe this is the way for us to analyze it. Relative size is another way for us to show similarities with the object, the visual object. And figure and the ground, as we talked before, or I presented in the PowerPoint, is the idea what is the foreground and what is the background, and what is the combination with regard to the figure. And so again, how do we see lines and how do we interact with them, and how do we see transparency, and what is transparency is good for, and how the color corresponds. And the overlap is, again, the issue is to provide the visual patterns of the data itself. Patterns in motion is the idea of how to show the limitation of the elements done incorrectly result in wagon wheel effect, which is very badly. So in this case, how do we apply that and how do we do that? So from counter in motion, again, visual elements can be classified based on different in the movement and the attributes it consists, and moving frames is another way for us, and we will learn about moving frames when we will talk about animation. And again, it is a big issue, especially with interactive visualization. So go over that, see what does it entail. So that will give you some ideas of the idea of Gestalt and how applied it. And so attribute of good design is the length, the width, the orientation, the size, the shape, and the blur, and the color, and the position and the motion. And this is from our textbook in page 39. Pre-attributes example is how to make it more precise and how to make it less precise, and what attributes of the visual is consist of. So the building blocks of information or data visualization is the idea that we have to, when we apply visualization, we need to understand the visual object, we need to understand the visual properties of the object that we are trying to achieve, and how do we apply that, what type of statistical analysis we are trying to show in the visual capture, and what is the visual patterns we are trying to achieve. So the practical aspect of the class, in this case, we are going to learn about geographic information of the data. What is geographic information? It is basically based on location. So we are using a map, and we're going to show some addresses to show the map. And nowadays in your phone you can use the map or Google Map to show you the way to the nearest restaurant or the library or to your best friend's house. So those are the things that we are looking at. And so we have, again, terminology that we are often apply. We have map and images that give us the patterns. We have graph that often use us as trends and relationship. We have the data that has consequences or correlation, and the text provide us the idea of explanation or provide us more insight into the visualization. In this case, I will start with the basic. I will start with Google Table. And Google Table is the idea of, I'm sure that all of you, because you are part of USF, you have a Google account or Google Drive. And so it will allow you to create tables and be able to do that. One of the things that is often used is the idea of search for tables in Google. So the search.google.com/tables allowed you to search to different type depending on your favorite subject. Example, if you're into sport or into the political scores or so on. So the using Google Drive, you are able to do that. So what can we do with data? So Google allowed us to do that and allowed us to connect to Tableau in order for us to visualize based on city or county map. So in this case, I'm going to share with you Florida Public Libraries that created on Google Drive. And I'm going to use Tableau. And this is the address to download Tableau to your desktop. You're going to use the public version, not the commercial version. Why? Because the public version is free and I don't want you to pay for any application. So you will download the application. It will look something in those lines. This is the application. I'm going to start again. I'm going to call it the application itself. Sorry for waiting. And this is the application. So one of the things that it allowed you to do is the ability to connect to different type of data set. Or you can use Google Sheet or Google Table, and that's what I was aiming to. You can download the file that I posted or find a data set and use Excel to apply that. I like the idea of connectivity. I use the Google Connect, and so in this case it will allow me to open up my table and in this case connect to my Google account, and here it is, all the data set laid out for me in Tableau. So Tableau already knows what is the city, what is the library, because of my setting up the table correctly with the address. And now the fun begins. What does it mean the fun begins? Now I can go to the spreadsheet, or I can start thinking about the visualization. And what is nice about Tableau is it gives you columns and rows. And so in this case, columns is what is going that direction, and row is going that direction. Let's see how it play out in this case. So I'm going to give the address, and I'm going to stretch it to the row, and I'm going to take the city, and I'm going to apply that to columns. So it will give me the sense of city versus column. I can change that, and I can apply address and city or zip code in order for you to do that, or I can use the columns to measure names. In this case, it will allow me to generate names. In this case, I did not develop the names for each one of them, and so this is not a good idea, but you can remove it or play with it in order for you to do that. In my case, I'm going to use city and columns in order for me to use, and Tableau will highlight what type of map it recommend you to use. You can use that type of that type. Again, play with it, try to figure out what it is. And here it is. And so it will show me all the map in Tampa. And he will give me more ability to apply to it and to develop it. So again, you have the ability, hold on a second, I cannot move it. I don't know what happened. I remove this. And he doesn't allow me, when he do long analysis, he doesn't allow me to apply to it. And so I will use this map, and this is the result of it. I did not use the first one, I'll use the second one in order to show what it is entail. And I can change the colors, I can change the size, I can change the label, I can give a label to the data, I can have more details, and I can have overloop of the name of the cities and so on. So it gives you a lot of dimensions with regard to how it plays and how to apply. And so the idea in the end is that you will have something like that. This is my own creation, and I spend some time to do that, but this is the objective of the assignment for your first class. So for your first assignment in this class, you're going to generate your own Tableau you can use the Florida Public Libraries, or you can use any other data set you like. It's up to you. I am very open to anyone who will experiment. That's part of learning. Experiment is part of it. So again, how do you search for data? You're going to use the Google search function that Google search has. It's search.google.com/search. You will search and you will find it and apply that. So your assignment, you will search and collect data, personal, public, or something of your interest. You will use Tableau table to convert the data into geographical map, and you will post it on your blog and submit the address to the blog to Canvas. So that's it for the first week, the second module. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learned new tricks. And until next time, have fun. See you next time.